Ethan was a 12-year-old boy with a messy mop of brown hair and a face that spoke of 1,000 struggles. He had lived on the streets of New York City for as long as he could remember. His mother had passed away when he was just a toddler, and his father, he was a mystery Ethan had given up trying to solve. The streets had become Ethan's home, and survival was his only goal. But even in the harshness of his life, Ethan had a kind heart and sharp instincts. Every day, Ethan sat outside a bustling cafe near Central Park. He watched people come and go, observing their lives with silent curiosity. Among them was a woman who caught his attention more than anyone else. Her name was Clara. She was beautiful, with long, dark hair and an air of grace. Clara always had a warm smile for the cafe staff and anyone who crossed her path. To Ethan, she seemed like someone who had everything. But her eyes told a different story, a hidden sadness he couldn't quite place. Clara was married to a wealthy businessman named Victor. On the outside, Victor was the perfect husband, charming, generous, and always attentive in public. But behind closed doors, Clara's life was far from perfect. Victor was controlling, manipulative, and increasingly distant. Lately, he had been acting stranger than usual, disappearing for hours without explanation and snapping at Clara for the smallest things. One cold December morning, Clara walked into the cafe, her shoulders hunched against the biting wind. Ethan was sitting on his usual spot by the door, shivering under a thin blanket. Clara noticed him and, as always, gave him a warm smile. She went inside and came out moments later with a steaming cup of hot chocolate and a croissant. "Here you go, sweetie," she said, placing the items in front of Ethan. "Stay warm, okay?" "Thank you, ma'am," Ethan replied, his voice trembling from the cold. That was the first time Clara stopped to talk to him. Over the next few weeks, their brief exchanges grew into longer conversations. Clara learned about Ethan's life on the streets, and Ethan learned about her lonely world behind the walls of her mansion. They formed an unlikely bond, two souls from entirely different worlds, connected by their shared sense of isolation. One evening, as the city lights began to glow, Ethan was scrounging through a dumpster behind a nearby hotel when he overheard an argument. He crouched low, his heart racing, as he recognized Victor's voice. Victor was talking to a man in a black coat, and their conversation made Ethan's blood run cold. "She'll drive it tomorrow," Victor said, his voice laced with anger. "Make sure the brakes are completely cut. I want this done, no mistakes." The man in the black coat nodded. "Consider it done. By the time she hits the highway, it'll be too late." Ethan froze. His mind raced as the weight of what he'd just heard sank in. Victor was planning to harm Clara. The woman who had shown him kindness, the only person who had ever treated him like he mattered, was in danger. Ethan knew he had to act. But how? Who would believe a homeless boy accusing a powerful millionaire? The next morning, Ethan waited outside the cafe, anxiously scanning the street for Clara's car. When she finally arrived, Ethan bolted toward her, waving his arms frantically. "Don't drive your car," he shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. "Please, ma'am, don't drive. Your husband, he cut the brakes." Clara's eyes widened in shock. "Ethan, what are you talking about?" "I heard him," Ethan said, panting. "Last night, he was talking to some guy. He said the brakes were cut. Please, you have to believe me." Clara's heart pounded as she looked at Ethan's pleading face. Deep down, she knew he was telling the truth. Victor's behavior over the past few weeks had been suspicious, and now it all made sense. Clara didn't hesitate. She called the police, her hands trembling as she explained the situation. Within minutes, officers arrived and examined her car. Sure enough, the brakes had been tampered with. Victor was arrested later that day, and the truth of his plan unraveled. He had been in financial trouble, and Clara's life insurance policy was his way out. In the days that followed, Clara couldn't stop thinking about Ethan. If it hadn't been for him, she might not have been alive. She found him sitting in his usual spot by the cafe, his head hung low. "Ethan," she said softly, kneeling in front of him, "you saved my life. I don't even know how to thank you." "You don't have to," Ethan replied, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm glad you're okay." But Clara wasn't about to let it end there. She took Ethan under her wing, giving him a warm bed, hot meals, and a chance at a better life. Over time, Ethan began to heal from the scars of his past, and Clara found a new purpose in helping him. Years later, Ethan stood on a stage, dressed in a sharp suit, as he delivered a speech to a room full of people. He was no longer the scared boy on the streets, but a confident young man with a bright future. And in the front row, Clara sat with tears in her eyes, proud of the boy who had once saved her life. Their story became a testament to the power of kindness and the strength of the human spirit, a reminder that sometimes even the smallest voices can make the biggest difference. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.